This lighter color in this Edwards means it's tougher. And the good fun will be on the outside. There's not a lot of coning, just very shallow. I need a little bit harder hammerstone to start. This is pretty soft, but oh. I'll just use it. Getting into it, a good spot would be to clip this to get involved, or maybe hit here since I have this seam. Looking for, this is a little bit cracked up, so I'm looking for a fresh spot. It's gonna be a little too. I need a little bit harder to get in. Harder hammerstones like to be contacted on steeper planes. Softer hammerstones grab edges, but the edges can't be, unless you really overstrike, they can't be that lean. See at the corner? Eventually we can get one across here, but let's do a little bit work here first. With the hammerstones, unless you do a whole lot of edge battering, grinding, or careful edge trimming, it helps to be deliberate about the early thinning flakes. If you just edge the piece, then you have a lot less options. So take your time and try to minimize your strikes. And that just comes with some experience. That one's a little bit short. You have to know where you have to take these little sharp edges down, or oh, I took that a little bit too much. There's a little cone right there. So that messed up that whole platform, because now my contact area is just going to be absorbed by the hammerstone. So let's turn this low angle, turn this a little bit lower. Got all kinds of width here, so I can lose a little bit of width and shape this and get this steep I need. So dropping the angle and just trimming. This is good practice. You have to be able to know how to trim and turn those clean flakes. So angle down, do that. Slight brushing. See this deepness? See how I shaped that? I'm going to overstrike this. When people use hammerstones, a lot of times they'll use a hammerstone and they'll just start hitting down and getting kind of a wavy edge. And you can do that, especially if you use areas of width. We don't need to maintain it around a tip or something. But otherwise it's helpful to plan out your flakes and do the thinning early so that the contours are smooth. They don't have to be smooth, but if you can do the little turning flakes that are clean, then the big flakes are easier. You know, just knowing how to create edges. Creating edges and platforms are kind of different. Sometimes a little bit harder hammerstone helps do those little nipping, edge turning flakes. The reason why I'm turning this edge down is because I think that even I can thin more and still get under those cones. And this is going to be the little bit harder flint. So I'm just creating these two beveled edges so that I can plane this down. You don't want to hit multiple times with a hammerstone. You want to have the right edge and commit. You can have a lot more, be forgived a lot more with antler platforms if you misstrike than with a hammerstone. I gotta be able to catch that pretty high. Okay. Cortex robs energy because it's soft. The flint is broken down, so you can hit there. Sometimes it helps to just take a teeny, that really will help. See that teeny little flake? That makes that surface cleaner, and you'll get a lot more energy into the flake. I have a little bit there, but it's still okay. See that corner? I can just take it down just a little bit. Get rid of that cortex. I want probably a little bit grabbier, so I'm going to use a sharper point of this to do some turning. The rounder, slightly harder hammerstone can take out a scoopy flake that makes it a little bit harder to evenly trim. So the big flakes, eventually, after some practice, are easier than these flakes of just turning. Brushing small edge turning flakes. If you can do all this little work, then the big work is pretty easy. I'll continue to turn that down so I can thin through this side where check out those cones. Trying to go really slow. Softer hammerstones sometimes are hard to shear in a braid, so I use it in conjunction with a harder braiding stone. Different grits, the sand will grab and you can shear and turn differently. So where do I harder braider? Oh, here it is. See, I'm using this harder side. When sandstones get tumbled and they weather, the outside will be a little bit harder. And then as you wear in, sometimes it can get a little bit more brittle. And push the edge a little bit. This cone is running deep here, but that ought to chip out. Use this narrow side for some trimming. Probably gonna switch over to, well, I could do a checking flake here on that stuff. Trimming down. Grinding down, get that angle steep enough. Maybe a checking flake. Get to those cones a little bit. I like that if it gone a little deeper. Okay. Now we have to trim this down to come back, or adjust this and come across, or both. I've just made that too heavy and didn't release this little flake. So, probably come off the back corner here with a harder abrader. That'll take this corner down. This sandstone is harder, so use just a little nipper. Oops. There. Because of this is so flat and thick off this edge, sometimes you have to just do a kind of relieve on one side, come back and reset. This grinding back and forth, fingers underneath and edge moving, it's a matter of thickening places you're going to contact and not necessarily creating an isolated or relief platform, just making sure it's heavy enough that it'll hold. Maybe come off this corner a little bit. Try to keep length, so if we work from the corners, we can come back and go this way. Let's check this. I like a little bit smaller hammerstone than this right now. See, I caught that just a little overstrike. Actually, I didn't overstrike it too much. I hit where I want to hit. Platform made contact up there. What's nice about being deliberate, sometimes you're going to break things. So it took me like four or 5 months to get pretty decent with the hammerstones, and part of the reason it took so long is that my mindset for edges and abrasion for antler had preconditioned me to where I didn't and I was instinctively making all these antler platforms, and I had to completely change my mindset and work with it and focus on deliberate flakes and minimizing strikes in order to learn hammerstones. When you see me nap and I'm working fast with a hammerstone, it seems like I'm just randoming around and you doing kind of what I do with antler, but I have to do edges totally different and set things up different with a hammerstone. And so I'm trying to work really slow to kind of show how I go about that. In order to maximize the length on these, with some practice, it's pretty easy to get crafty and keep length and work tougher charts, because the hammerstone chips clean on tough materials so well compared to other tools that if you can slow down, be deliberate about removals, and then after you get better, you can learn to really maximize and preserve size on small to medium sized rocks more than you can with antler. See, now we're in a position where we can just trim this back. And so we'll only lose 1/8 of an inch probably, or maybe 1/4. Pinching. Just catching the edge, backing off. Trimming flakes. Now even on little flakes like this, I flip around and go really fast, but I'm trying to figure out ways to get in and be kind of stingy. Sometimes I'll look at a spot like this and I'll think, well, I want to get in and hit that. And another thing that, for people that use harder percussion tools, they can do a whole lot of edge grinding and then look and say, well, where's the spot that I'm going to hit? If you do things like overground areas next to places you want to hit, then fixing it to get back, you end up losing more stone than you need. So you just do a little trim back, move over a little bit. So I just lowered that right there out of the way, so I'm not going to overstrike and catch that. I'll get that little corner and just pinch. That little flake is all we needed there. You can come in with your narrow hammerstone even if you want to be super stingy, and come in and go. And accuracy is just like little short flake. I chopped that down, but it's okay because this will get fixed. But see how I lowered that little spot? Pinch. See that? Now that's building into the balance there. Now here's where I'll look and I'll do trimming. So we have 2 more removals here, and then we have some thick areas there. We have a little coning off this edge. We have this flake that expanded and rolled out, and we have our original cortex on the tip. So I'll just look at areas to do little trimming flakes so I can check out these cones and know that this is my tip and work down a preserved length. Here, the spurred isolated area, I don't want to just hit that there because that's not going to release a flake. So if I was going to be really stingy, I could go back like this, do a teeny trimming back in, create a little bit of a uphill for that flake to go. All flakes follow ridges, and you can help a wide flake get through a flat area with some surface support and some more rigid support. But on a flat surface, no matter what the tool, you take a flake, every flake will be round. So generally the flakes are going to follow mass and ridges, and ways to encourage flakes to do other things. The main important thing is to know where you need just gentle support, and then to keep stuff from moving and not squeeze so that you're putting stresses where the fracture is going to come off, which will cause those hatcher marks where it's stressed, or just an all-out break. So now that I shaped that platform, it's got one teeny little high area here. I could even make that even better if I wanted to. But I mean, you don't need to. You just have to make it good enough. Whoops. I hit that high area in it. I want to release it. A little bit pinching. Probably need just a little bit tighter grain hammerstone. I need to find a really smooth spot to hit this. Well, I boogered that up. Smaller hammerstone would have been good there. Trimming and evening the edge. We'll get back to this spot from here. This hammerstone is a little too soft there, but it'll work. See, I'm keeping that edge straight and having a couple problems, but trying to smooth that back. As you go up and you see a little area that you can come back, you can either put it on standby or you can take it to contour. Let's do a little bit work on this side and then we'll hammerstone down. Using the corner. Learning how to shape and turn edges with the hammerstone is really helpful. A little harder. The soft hammerstone doesn't release, just a little. There you go. I need to get my reading glasses and we'll switch hammerstones. So this would make like a nice martindale. If I was gonna do some a Marshall or Pedernales or a Montel, I would have been more wasteful. I'd have been a lot more aggressive. I wouldn't have done so much continuous edge turning back and forth, and I would have done things a little bit differently. But I want to make sort of a nice lenticular preform and then notch it and have enough width so I'd be in good shape to do a martindale out of this. The preforms are different. Different cultures have different ways about going, how to break up the rock, and the quality of the rock and the size of the rock and the availability had sometimes to do with how aggressive they're going to go with the hammerstone reduction.